Welcome back to Montgomery and Company. I'm your host, Renee Montgomery, and I am hyped to welcome writer, director, and award-winning filmmaker, Deborah Riley Draper. Appreciate you joining us here, Deborah.
I'm so hyped to be here.
Let's go.
Exciting. I'm a fan, so let's jump in.
Thank you. All right, so hold on. I got to flex on you real quick because I want people to know. I want to flex on a little bit of your credits. You were the director of James Brown's Say It Loud on A&E, a docuseries produced by Questlove and Mick Jagger. Now,
that's right.
Because you already know where I'm going, because it's like, Questlove and Mick Jagger, what was that like?
That's like having the two best EPs in music, right? Crazy. So it was 4 episodes about the greatest entertainer ever, James Brown. And I got to tap into the knowledge of his friend, Mick Jagger, a longtime friend, and like the James Brown aficionado, which is Questlove. Like there's not a track, a beat, or anything you can play from the James Brown catalog that Quest does not know. Like he literally studied him as subject. So being able to have them as EPs and them being able to open their Rolodex, as a result, I got to interview Bootsy and LL Cool J and talk about James Brown and, and talk to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis about what I didn't know. My favorite song, That's the Way Love Goes, Janet Jackson, James Brown sample.
Really?
Yes.
So samples are always so interesting to me because it's like there's a formula for success there. But I got to ask Mick Jagger, what? Come on, we know the Mick Jagger of the Mick Jagger world. Like I got the moves like Jagger, but who is he as like the human? You was around him.
You know what? He is smart. And quite knowledgeable. And he has a depth of knowledge that I didn't expect, not just in music, but in film and art across culture. He's 80 years old. He was launching a tour. He had this amazing birthday party he was planning in London. And, new album, new everything. We interviewed him. I had to kind of work with his schedule because it's like, I'll be on the island.
Okay, because this is Mick Jagger, honey.
Yeah, his island. So when he got to LA, it was great to be able to talk to him about a career that started in the 60s and that continues. That's not ending. It's actually picking up more steam, Like the Stones are the Stones, but for him to talk about his career and say James Brown impacted him to be the Mick Jagger that we know, not just the dance moves, but the ability to connect with an audience and the ability to storytell through music. Like I was mesmerized by his ability. Plus, since he had an Oscar, I was like, tell me more, sir.
Exactly.
Tell me more, Sir Jagger. Exactly. I want to learn.
So I was flexing, but then I had to ask, but you did the Legacy of Black Wall Street. Those are just a few, but I want to get into, as a director, you're a film producer, like, what do people like you watch on TV? Okay, because I'm big.
Bridgerton.
Okay.
For the goddess that is Shonda Rhimes, I watch all things Shonda.
Really?
100%.
I love that.
From day one.
Shondaland. We're Shondaland stands over here too.
Shondaland.
What?
But yes, I watched that. This past year I watched Hijack because it just, that's just check for all the reasons. Because the writing's great.
Yes.
Right.
And Idris.
Better than great.
That's hilarious.
I watched that. But Legacy of Black Wall Street, that was for Owen. And what was funny about that is I was super nervous when I got the call to do that. I was like, will Miss Winfrey be watching this? Am I going to get notes from Oprah? Let me understand my assignment.
And how is she involved in her projects that are on her network?
We got notes back from her. And it was really great because they were very positive. And the notes that existed, I could action them. There were notes that were constructive and actionable. Nice. So being able to do those 2 episodes, write and direct them and have them come on OWN and Discovery Plus for me was great. But the subject matter of Legacy of Black Wall Street, and it aired 100 years to the day of the massacre.
Oh, man.
So to be able to tell that story of Black millionaires being murdered for success was personal in a lot of ways because you think about, a legacy that's broken, right? They're missing links in those family histories because of what happened. So that was a bit of a tearjerker to work on, but at the same time, it was exhilarating because you see the future happening in Greenwood, and you see new entrepreneurs, and you see new people building on their dreams and having vision, born out of what happened in the past, and they're carrying that legacy forward. So
I love it.
that was fun.
Seeds planted, they didn't know it was going to grow. I'm curious because you're a director, and I've seen this before where it's like the projects, they kind of become your baby, right? So how is it when Oprah sends her notes of constructive criticism? Like, how is it when somebody critiques your baby?
I'm not listening. No, I'm just kidding. I'm like terrible at taking notes. I'm getting better. I'm working on it because I'm a writer and a director. I'm like, I wrote that and I directed that, so I'm good.
So
it's
you
working.
knew exactly how you wanted
That's
it
what
to
I
be.
wanted when I started it. No, taking notes. Everyone on the team laughs at me because I do abide by this principle. I actually don't listen to people. I don't, because when a whole lot of folks start talking and you're in your creative space, it messes up my creative rhythm. So when it's ready, then I'll present it for notes. And then I'll read the notes and I'll digest the notes. And then I'll decide if I want to action those notes or not. But like random talk, I'm not here for it. I do not want to hear people. I'm not interested in the comments
So
at
how
all.
do you, I mean, this is great for me. We have a production company, Think Tank, and how do you basically tell people thank you, but no thank you?
Well, this is what I say. I'm a creative and I have a particular vision that I'm on a journey to get to. And I need to get there. I may need to fall. I may need to get back up. I may make some mistakes, but I need to make sure that I am going in the direction that I want to go. And when I need your incredible input, I'm going to ask for it.
Wow.
Yeah. But I don't need it in the middle. I don't need it at the beginning because I need to find my way.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so you also directed Olympic Pride, American Prejudice, and when you talked about it's the 1936 Olympics verse, I'm curious, you covered and studied that Olympics. Now we just witnessed the 2024 Olympics that happened in Paris. There was a lot of people that talked about the racism that happened in France. I mean, we saw Serena Williams go to her social media. We saw Steph Curry's family deal with some things. We heard that there were some people maybe calling the N-word to LeBron James. This was the 1936 Olympics. You were covering this is 2024.
You know what? Things happen in cycles, right? Until as a culture, we deal with the root of racism and we deal with kind of the lack of understanding humanity and the lack of equity and access that people of color have and why that creates such this space of hatred. Until we unpack that, we're going to continue to get that. In 1936, you had 18 Black athletes, right?
Total,
400 American athletes, 18 Black athletes. Most people know Jesse Owens, but he had 17 other teammates, including Mac Robinson, Jackie Robinson's older brother, right? Oh. Yeah, and Ralph Metcalfe, who would become a congressman and become the founder of the Congressional Black Caucus and write the resolution for Black History Month. So this team was stoked, right? It was like 18 of the best Black athletes in the history of sport. And so they're on a boat, which, we don't really have that best of luck with boats. They're on a boat sailing to Nazi Germany. And that's where they would compete for the first time. And there were two female athletes, Black women, one from Chicago, Southside, one from Boston, Tiddy Pickett and Louise Stokes. So there are these two Black women, 17 and 18 years old, in the middle of Nazi Germany. So what they experienced is quite conflicting because on the one hand, they won hearts and they won medals, but at the same time, on the American side, they experienced racism from the coaches. So I think we have a legacy of oppression and a legacy of our inability to deal with each other as equals.
Wow.
And we have to sort that.
I mean, and you talk about things that are cyclical, and we're now in another election cycle. You directed 20 Pearls, chronicling the history of America's first Black sorority, featuring VP Harris and now presidential candidate Harris. I mean, what was the energy like seeing that then and then now? What are your thoughts now, seeing what she's gone on to do?
It's crazy because when we were interviewing her, like there was so much build up because Secret Service was like, we need to see the room. So it was all of that energy coming to make sure that everything was safe, everything was secure.
How long do they come in advance? Like
we had been talking to them for weeks, and then they came in. We set the room up 48 hours in advance, and they checked everything out, and it was great. But that had me all nervous and stressed. And then when she walked in, it was just all of this immediate, brilliant energy and joy, and we laughed. She talked about the nickname they called her because her ears were big in college. And
what was the nickname?
they called her 3 C's and for cool, collected, but they also called her Pinocchio.
Oh no, what?
You know.
Not VP Harris. I mean, to your point though, I love her energy. Where does she rank on your interviews as like?
She would be number 1 for me. Sir Mick Jagger. It's a tie.
No. So it's
and,
a tie between Mick Jagger and VP Harris as the best interviews.
Yeah, because they came with such a depth of knowledge, and I'm a knowledge seeker. So they were able, like, VP Harris was able to track the history of the sorority, but in the context of the women's movement, right? In the context of how America set women up from the very beginning, right? From the time of Plymouth Rock forward. So she put everything in political and cultural context. And then I learned cool stuff, like her aunt also was our soror and went to Howard University.
So you said, hold on, you said our.
Yes.
Okay, so are you an AKA?
100%.
Okay.
So,
my sister, I feel connected. My sister, my cousins, my family, they're all AKAs. So
that was one of the reasons I was hired to direct a documentary.
Kept it in-house, of course, because you couldn't have, I mean, you had to have.
Would have been odd, right?
Yeah. I mean, because could a Delta produce the same level?
Now, see, you're going to give me him a walk right out that door.
I had to ask because it was like, I just know how it is where
it's all, in the documentary, it's all D9 love.
Wow. Yeah,
so
that's amazing.
the film is a salute to our history and how we've managed to create institutions that allow us to serve, that allow us to become better oriented within our own communities, to do well, to do better. So we talk about Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, of course, but we talk about the other sororities and fraternities too, because as a function, as the Divine Nine, there's great work coming through every organization.
Absolutely.
At all times.
I think the Divine Nine, I think it's going to be a real stroll to the pole.
It's going to be a real stroll to the pole. That's actually in my film, the first stroll to the poles, and then the original kind of 1948 collective of the Divine Nine that decided they're going to be a political force. That was in the 40s.
Wow.
Man,
I love the history and how it connects to today. I mean, even there's so many things that are changing rapidly with time. We have streaming changing television at a large level. People talk about it on the music side, how streaming has changed the business. People also talk about it on the TV side, how you can't produce necessarily the same volume type expensive movies anymore because the payback is just not going to be the same. What are your thoughts on film, the future of filmmaking, how streaming has changed the business? I mean, you're in the thick of it.
It's interesting. In May, I was at the Cannes Film Festival on a panel, and they asked that question. They specifically asked, "Are documentaries dead? Like, what are you going to do?" And my answer was like, I don't believe that. I believe that you have to adjust, right? There was a time when there was no TV, when there was just radio. There's a time when there was no radio, there was just newspaper, right? Like, media changes, and we have to figure out how to still be creative and be profitable, because we are in this to make money and to be a business. So we have to figure out where there are ways to be efficient that doesn't compromise our creativity, that doesn't compromise the quality. Yeah. And I think we're all brilliant enough to come together and figure out ways to make it better. And then there's always independent cinema. There's always the Oscar Michaud of it all, right?
What's that?
Oscar Michaud was the first Black filmmaker in the 1920s and the 1910s, and he figured out how to work to have a business outside of the traditional studio model. So I think that still exists for us.
I mean, I think you kind of hitting on that. You said Oscar Michaud?
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like social media too. You have all these various companies that are popping up and producing. How do you bring something to life if you don't have a budget?
Well, you're going to work really hard at it. But that it's exactly what Oscar Michaud did. He didn't really have a budget. So the actors were a lot of his neighbors and friends and people he went to church with. He showed his films in barns and in pool halls all over the place to build his audience, right? So he was building this audience in non-traditional ways, in what would be kind of like the great-great-grandparent of Twitter, you know, the great-great-grandparent of Instagram. So he was building these pockets of audiences across the Midwest. So I think the audience building and the brand building, that's important. But I do think if you create great work, people are going to want to see it, and they're going to want to talk about it, and they're going to want to share it. I think quality becomes the first thing we think about, and then distribution.
I love
versus
that.
distribution than quality.
Because I mean, I feel like film and music are so synonymous, and even now with artists, it's getting to where even every big song used to have a music video, right?
Yeah.
But now songs, they just drop them, they just release. You have 13 Days in Ferguson. I have to get to that before we go, because that one, I think, it commemorates the movement that was before, and after unjust murder of Michael Brown. So how can we use, there's voices now. I think a lot of people now, there was a time where people felt like your voice, how do I use it and still keep my professionalism? Or how can I make my voice be heard? What are your thoughts surrounding that?
I think what I've learned, and I'm going to go backwards to go forward. When James Brown said, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud," I think it was anthemic at that time for a lot of reasons, because we weren't accustomed to using our own voice. We weren't accustomed to say it loud. We were accustomed to, if I say it, am I going to get in trouble? There was so much respectability politics at play. We weren't sure if we were going to say our voice. Will you still have your job? Will you still have your house?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to have an identity and exist? So watching James Brown always say it loud, and then looking at the voices of all of those young activists in Ferguson exercising their freedom of speech, exercising their voice, being visible, demanding to be heard. I think there's such a tremendous lesson in that, in not shrinking, right? And being able to stand on what you believe and stand on your truth and say it.
Say it loud. I mean,
say it loud.
It is
I'm
funny
Black and I'm proud.
Man, that's fire. That's 13 Days in Ferguson. Just by the way, all these, I'm bouncing off of all the projects that you are involved in. Either you directed it, wrote it, and it's incredible to see, because one of the things that we're starting to see more of is like people are saying out loud, like, yeah, let's have some representation. Let's have some people behind the camera that look like the stories you're telling in front of the camera. So I love that that's what you're doing. And before you go, though, I like to play a little game. So I want to know if you want to have a little Moco shot clock. You want to play a little?
Let's do it.
All right, come on.
How much time do I have on the clock?
60 seconds.
All right, let's go.
Okay, 60 seconds. I'm asking you about how many questions is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions? There might be 4.
Okay.
And, I just want to see what you're working with.
Let's go.
All right, 60 seconds on the clock. Got it.
Oh my God, this is real. All right, let me get my game face then.
These are questions about you, though. So you know who know you better than you?
No one.
All right, so start the clock. A sport you can play really well.
Golf.
Okay, Tiger Woods. What's your number?
I'm like Tiger Woods when he was 1.
All right, I'm gonna keep moving. So your shot clock. A sport you're really bad at.
Volleyball.
Okay, agreed. If you could have one sports superpower, what would it be?
Dunking.
Come on with it. Me too. If you could brag that you beat one athlete, who would it be?
Michael Jordan.
Come on, these are great answers. Last question. What's your walkout theme song?
I'm going to take the same one as Vice President Kamala Harris, and I'm going with Freedom.
Freedom. I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. I love it. Yes,
I break chains.
I break chains all by myself. This is, listen, the Beehive is here. We're here. Okay. But listen, I could have talked to you for so long. Thank you for joining me.
Welcome.
I love everything you're doing. I hope one day we work on a project together.
Wait, just say it.
Oh, one day we will work on a project together.
Okay, we can do it tomorrow.
Come on with it. Thank you for joining us here on Moco.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Wow. Make sure you guys follow everything Miss Deborah's doing at DeborahRileyDraper.com, and we'll be back with more Moco.
WABE.